I'm Jackie Schertz. Welcome to Hey Listen. Tonight's topic is substance abuse. 1 out of 3 Americans, which translates into 56 million people, have alcohol abuse problems. And that's causing problems in their families. We're going to be talking with 2 guests today who are recovering alcoholics. Please stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome to Hey Listen. Today's topic is substance abuse. We are very fortunate to have 2 guests with us today. They're recovering alcoholics. We have George Prentice with us, who is from Ovid, New York. Ovid is near Geneva. Excuse me, no. Yes, Geneva. He's been an alcoholic for 25 years and now is a recovering alcoholic. He would like to set up an ACOA group, which is an adult children's of alcoholics group. Also, we have Ronda Mothersell with us today, and she is a recovering alcoholic. And a little bit about her background is that she's planning to go back to school in the fall and study social work. She's been receiving treatment at Norris Clinic here in Rochester. Thank you for being with us today. First of all, I'd like to ask you, what led you to have an alcohol problem? How did that start?
Well, for me, it was during school, when I was in a residential school. I saw people talking about drinking, and as I started nearing graduation, I decided that when we graduated, maybe I'd try it. And people would tell me, how to get alcohol and what people would do. And as we started celebrating for graduation, my parents had a party, invited a lot of people over to celebrate my graduation. And I guess that's the first time I really drank it all. And there were a lot of hearing people there. And I just, started to drink a bit. And, I wasn't enjoying the celebration, so I went to find some of my friends and got some money, and we went out drinking, and really I got pretty high. And one thing led to another. When I got home, my mom asked me where I'd been, and I told her I was out with my friends, and she warned me I better not do that anymore.
Were you resentful of that?
Well, it just went in one ear and out the other. I was having a good time, and I enjoyed going to the bars. So really, they're telling me not to didn't have any effect at all.
Fine. What about you, Rhonda? How did it start for you?
Well, it started for me in college. You know that college is quite the party atmosphere at times. And I grew up very conservatively. I was not a party person. And then when I got into college, I started experimenting, and I went all the way from really A to Z. I went from a very conservative person to someone who partied a lot. I wanted something different, and I wanted something fun to do, so I started drinking, and it just got worse and worse, and that led me really into it.
As we were talking about before, your father is a pastor, correct? And did that have any effect on you becoming an alcoholic?
Well, in a way, it was a lot of pressure on me. You know, I love my father, of course, and I really love my whole family. But the point is that he was very well known, especially at the National Technical Institute for the Deaf. And he got a lot of attention, and so did I. At the beginning, it was good attention, but in the end, I started to get a lot of negative attention because I was drinking so much.
When you're drinking with your friends, and maybe cocktails or light drinks, you don't really realize that you're having a problem. When did you detect that you might start having a problem instead of just being partying? When did you discover you had a problem?
Well, I was experiencing a lot of pressure with my family, and I guess with my wife's family. So, I'd go out with my friends, and I think it was related to stress, really. I felt I was under a lot of pressure, and the more I felt stressed out, the more I'd tend to drink. And if I was feeling anger, I'd drink instead of allowing myself to feel my emotions, and it seemed like it helped. But it wasn't really helping anyway.
Yes, as things are going along, you're socially drinking, you don't realize that at first you think it's helping you, and then it gets worse. When did you detect it? How? What kind of signs led you to believe that you were an alcoholic?
Well, really, I think my wife let me know what was happening.
She told me to go to AA.
And told me, I'd better go to AA. And that point, she was looking for some kind of treatment program, but I was going through a lot of denial. I wouldn't admit I had a problem, and I kept on drinking, wouldn't change my behaviors. And, my family, well, I still had a lot of pressure from my family.
And the alcohol was killing my brain.
And I think, really the alcohol was starting to affect me. I guess, people would tell me it's affecting my brain cells, and I certainly didn't want to die. One point, I got gasoline all over myself. So, in a lot of ways, I started to realize I was perhaps a bit out of control. And my wife was really upset. She took off, went to her mother's, my mother-in-law's, and, boy,
it was very scary.
It was really a scary situation, and people were telling me how stupid I'd been, and boy, I felt pretty stupid too at that point. It was just really emotional, and that's the point where I started bottoming out. It was just awful.
You okay? I enjoy your story. Maybe you could just take a break for a minute, and we'll go on with Rhonda sharing something for now. I know that this is very emotional to talk about your past experiences. Rhonda, when did you realize that you needed help, and what made you realize that?
It seemed that when I got into college, the first year I did pretty well, but then the beginning of the second year went okay, but then it started going downhill, and I didn't finish the end of my second year. By spring quarter, I felt, just very lost, confused. I had no job, and I took a leave of absence from school. I had no friends to speak of. I had, quote-unquote, lost my family. And I was kind of being a bum in school. I was found lying at one point on one of the sofas in the lounge in one of the dorms. I had been found in a telephone booth in that particular dorm as well, and there were a lot of embarrassing things that happened to me.
You didn't have a place to live at that point?
No, I had no
You're
place
just
to live.
Transient. Oh.
Yeah, I was just barely getting by, and by the end of that time, well, a lot of my friends just said, you can't take advantage of me, you've been here too long, you've got to get out. And I think I turned to alcohol to escape my problems. But then the next day, I would feel bad again. And I remember one of the faculty members coming up to me and saying, "What were you doing sleeping on the sofa?" And I said, "Well, I don't have a place to live." And this faculty member said that you really have a problem. Oh boy, did that really hit me hard. I realized at that time that I really did have a problem with alcohol.
At that time, did you seek help?
Yes, I did.
When you went for help, was that successful for you?
Yes. Really, at first, I also was going through denial. I didn't go for help, and I signed up for an appointment, but I didn't keep my appointment. And I knew that if I signed up for help, I had to go, and I had to admit that I had a problem. And so then I went over to Norris Clinic. And I really wanted to go there, and I wanted to go there and stay because they have dorm facilities, and I knew it would be a safe place.
I noticed that you were nodding. Is that because Norris Clinic is a safe environment for you as well?
Mm-hmm.
Some people say that you really have to hit bottom, and then you can start your recovery. Is that true? Do you have to hit bottom before you start to have help? Do you really have to go all the way to the bottom?
For me, I'd say I did hit bottom, definitely. I certainly hit bottom myself, and I'd say I lost my family, my wife and children.
You lost them? Did you get them back now?
Yes, we are back together now. Yes.
Yes, that's good for you. Uh-huh.
Boy, for me, that was bottoming out.
And for you, what was it?
Well, for me to hit bottom meant that I had no support from friends and no family. Actually, my family was there, but I didn't really want their support at that time. I definitely had a problem.
We were talking about the support systems that you have, and what's important, and that's an important part of your recovery. Who is your support? Who are your supporters?
Well, support can come in the form of a group or an individual person. It's someone there to offer me help, step by step, to get along and deal with the various frustrations and help us on the road to recovery. Okay, one person might have a weakness of spending a lot of money, and so they may have a buddy to kind of help them out and assist them in letting them know that they're spending too much. Either that or someone who could take the cash for a while and not let them spend it.
You mean somebody who will remind you not to keep doing something, to resist temptation? Support people, your family, friends, who?
Yeah, my family, friends, the people at AA. We've got a substance and alcohol support group, a variety of supports. Most of it is from the Alcoholics Anonymous people. They're really the ones who supported me the most.
And George, who are your supporters?
My support, certainly the people at AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, Adult Children of Alcoholics has helped me a lot, and they've helped me maintain sobriety. I think it's really tough. I started out trying to stay sober, and it's hard.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back with more about substance abuse. Welcome back. We're continuing with our topic about substance abuse. We've been discussing the emotional experiences that our guests have been through their recovering. Right now I want to ask you what your idea of success is. Are you successful? What does that mean to you?
Well, adult children of alcoholics, that's a goal I have, setting up the organization.
That's goals, but right now what's success to you? Okay.
Sobriety, staying
Being
sober.
I see.
Well, for success for me is really getting my family back and regaining their support. I have some very good friends who have come back to support me as well. And I'm going to be going back to school. I'm very happy to know that. That's coming up this fall.
You said also before that you have a place to live.
Yeah, I do have a place to live, for sure, now.
Are there comments we want to open it for audience right now? Do you have similar experiences, for example?
A person who, I'm not an alcoholic, but a person that, say, lives with an alcoholic, that person that lives with the alcoholic that perhaps don't see themselves as having any characteristics of alcoholism. Suppose the alcoholic stops and then the partner will say, well, I'll stop for you. I mean, I think it's important for the person to stop for themselves, or do you think that it's important for other people to support one another by stopping?
I think if there's an alcoholic and they live with someone who's not an alcoholic, the person who's not can, perhaps encourage the alcoholic to stop. They can encourage some sort of action on the part of the alcoholic to stop, certainly.
Also, that person, I believe, must hit bottom first in order to admit that they have a problem. And once you've bottomed out and you're starting to look for help. Maybe they don't work, for example, or that they want to stop smoking. Mm-hmm. They have to want to stop for themselves.
Yes, the person themselves has to want it. Yes, I understand.
How do you feel about going to AA meetings? I mean, does it really help you?
For me, I go to AA meetings and it does help. When I first went in, it's a safe place to be. If people don't go to meetings, they just tend to get worse and worse. And they start hanging out with their old friends again, getting into old habits, and they're probably going to relapse. But if you attend meetings, when you feel ready, go. It provides a cushion and some safety.
Yes, you reminded me about the term dry drunk.
Okay, a dry drunk is someone who has stopped drinking, but other people don't know it, meaning that they haven't gone for help. And they don't get any therapy like going to an AA meeting or going to a counselor. They're just trying to use their own willpower to stop on their own. I agree with George a little bit, but in my opinion, for myself, I go to a substance support group for the deaf, and that really helps me because I interact with deaf people who also have the same problem. If I go to a typical AA meeting, there are lots of people there, mostly who are hearing, and I can't really identify with them. I still say what's going on in my life, but I feel like I'm not getting enough feedback because I'm deaf and they're not. And so it feels good to go to a deaf support group. I have been going to AA meetings, but but I haven't been going just lately because I'm feeling stronger, so I go to the support group.
Is that why you'd like to set up the Adult Children of Alcoholics group? I see. For deaf people in particular. We have a comment over here.
You made the comment before about hitting bottom. And you said that people have to hit bottom in order to realize that they need to go for help. I'm wondering, can a person realize that they have a problem without hitting bottom? I mean, is it possible for a person to stop before they hit bottom? You say must hit bottom before they'll go for help. Do you really have to?
Well, that's a good question. From my experience, I think you do have to. It's kind of similar to smoking. You can stop, but for example, if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, you really better stop smoking. But many people get that message and then they don't stop. But then if they go to the doctor and find out that they've got cancer due to their cigarettes smoking, then that really is what hits home. And so I think the same thing can be applied to the drinking addiction.
Well, I understand your explanation about smoking. I mean, that can be an addictive habit as well. But alcoholism is really a disease. I mean, what defines bottom? And, you know, for some people it's different. I mean, why do people have to wait for that to happen? I mean, with smoking, I think smoking is really a different issue because, you know, it's more of a medical perspective that you're describing. With alcoholism, it's described as a disease. And you say that people are required to hit bottom before they'll admit that they have a problem and go for help.
You're talking about the medical issue, about alcoholism as a disease. Is that your point? So if you say that alcoholism, instead of a bad habit, now the perspective is that people have a more medical view of it being a disease. It takes a lot of the stigma away from the problem. Bottom, the meaning of bottom, is that different for individuals? With some people, all it takes is just one time that somebody says, what were you doing last night? Other people need to lose their homes, their wives. That could be bottom. It really depends on the individual.
Well, something just occurred to me. Hitting bottom means essentially losing control of yourself.
Okay, losing control, that's hitting bottom. Okay.
There was a comment previously about alcoholism as a disease. Well, that might be another topic. I mean, how do you define disease? I mean, personally, I feel that alcoholism is really what you asked for. I mean, you drank all that stuff. I mean, who could have prevented that? You know, it's internal control. I mean, a disease presents the concept of something that you can't avoid. There's nothing you can do to solve that. It's something that is innate or something that affects you from outside. Sort of an external locus of control. But the person themselves has the ability to stop drinking. I mean, it's the same thing with smoking. Some people are addicted to smoking. But is that a disease?
Well, do you have a comment about that?
Well, the funny thing is that when I very first took a drink, I started chugging them right away. It didn't matter what happened. And that was the first time I ever started to drink. I just started drinking like crazy. And I think that that's a good indicator that it is an illness.
Yes, you have a question over here.
I'd like to respond to the woman's previous question. I mean, in regards to the disease concept. I mean, you don't see people like in the hospital with it. I mean, that's the concept we have of disease sometimes, and I don't think alcoholism fits that model. I mean, drinking, many people do have the ability to develop control, but some people don't. They abuse it. They go beyond their body's limit to drink, and that defines abuse. So what we're talking about is going beyond the body's limit to handle alcohol, and at that point you lose control and you're developing a disease. I mean, that control cannot come back. I mean, you know, many people say, well, I'll just have one drink, but then they're not able to stop at one drink. And that lack of control defines it as a disease.
Yes, go ahead.
Well, then you could apply this to smoking. I mean, if people are smoking out of control, I mean, you call that abuse. I mean, and then they get out of control, and now, you know, they can't get their control back. I mean, they can't cut down their smoking. I don't know.
Yes, are you meaning that, are we accepting that smoking is okay? Is it a drug? Alcohol is less acceptable. Cocaine is even more unacceptable. Is that what you're talking about?
In regards to smoking, I mean, nicotine is the drug that's in smoking, and that's an addictive drug. But, I mean, can you lose your job that way? Can you lose your home because you smoke too much? Can you lose your family because you smoke too much? I mean, most people can hang on to those things and keep smoking. But with alcoholism, people lose their families, their jobs, I mean, control over their entire life as a result of drinking.
Yes. Aileen? Oh, no, we have another Bruce.
I'd like to add, in regards to the disease concept, meaning that at the point at which you lose control is really an important point in your regression with the disease. You know, you progressively lose control. People that this is happening to don't realize this is happening. I mean, it's a key concept is denial. They seem to think this drinking is fine. They don't recognize that things are going downhill for them. I mean, really, at the point that it starts, it becomes an inevitable process. The disease is going to happen. It's going to affect your spirit, it's going to affect your mind, and it's going to affect your health. At some point, you recognize these things, but in the process, you overlook them.
Also, I would like to say that
I'd like to say that alcoholism does not mean that you have to drink a whole lot. I mean, a lot of people have this control that have this idea that you have to be, a great drinker in order to be an alcoholic, and that's just not true. It's a reaction with your body. I mean, a question of whether or not you have control that defines the disease concept. You lose your family and your job and all that. Some people have this concept that you have to be some great drinker, but you can really be a teetotaler and still be an alcoholic.
Thank you, and we'll discuss more in just a moment. We'll be right back. We're here to continue with our discussion about substance abuse. We've had lots of participation from our audience, and right now we have a question over here.
How did you decide who to turn to and stuff?
What do you mean?
What made like, what made you decide who to go to? And, like, why not your family, or why not the other place?
Well, first, when I discovered that I had a problem, I immediately went to a place called Substance and Alcohol Intervention Services for the Deaf, also known as SAISD.
Okay.
And they immediately referred me to a place here called Norris Clinic. But before I went there, I went and visited my family and told them that I would be going to the clinic. And at that point, they were very happy to support me to go there.
And you knew about SAISD before that time? You knew it was there all along, you mean?
Well, I had heard some things about it.
Do we have another question from our audience?
During the break, we were having a discussion here and having quite a disagreement. And amongst our group, we were having a discussion about, say if one person drinks every day a glass, doesn't matter what it is, they're not out of control, but every day they drink, would you call them an alcoholic? I mean, they have a family and everything seems to be going really well, but they have this sense that every day they must have a glass of alcohol. Is that an alcoholic?
Yes.
I see some nods and some people who disagree. George, you had a comment?
Yes. For 25 years, I drank every day, and I was certainly an alcoholic. You know, I didn't realize I had a disease. I thought it was no big deal, so I drank every day. No big thing. And when I got into treatment, gosh, was I scared. I was shocked. They tried to tell me I had a disease, but I wasn't about to admit that. Hey, I drink to be comfortable. And alcohol doesn't help people feel more comfortable. It really doesn't.
You thought, but later on you discovered that was not true. Oh.
Yeah, it just wasn't so.
Do other people have comments about that, about drinking every day? One drink every day, for example.
Perhaps, I mean, in response to your question, you know, when you talk about a disease, there's a list of symptoms, you know, for disease, things that define the disease. One of the initial symptoms is something called a blackout. And this happens periodically to the person and more frequently as they go along progressively through the disease. Another one is that the person starts to hide their alcohol. They don't show it to other people. They have some need to hide it. Maybe at a party they'll drink in another room, and then they'll go out and socialize with people. Another symptom is that they may tend to have family problems, squabbles within the family. I mean, more and more tension will develop in the family. Other things are absenteeism from work, showing up late, and all these things define alcoholism as a disease. These things get progressively worse and worse. And when you look at all these symptoms and bring them all together, you can clearly identify the person as having a disease, and that's alcoholism.
Okay. So if someone is drinking every day but is doing fine and being happy with themselves, still having friends and socializing fine, and not hiding their alcohol, then that's fine. That's not an alcoholic, correct? Okay. We wanted to clarify that.
My parents are of Irish descent, and they're drinkers. They won't admit that they have a problem, but they're alcoholics. I mean, they've talked about this. We talked a lot about this many years ago. Does that make me an alcoholic? Because I'm a child of these people who drank so much? Will I have the problem? Will I develop the problem? Could I be a hidden alcoholic?
The statistics say that adult children of alcoholics are 4 times more likely to become alcoholics themselves. Do you have a reply to his question?
Well,
okay. Yes. Miranda?
well, really, I would say it depends on your own drinking progression and habits. If you drink a lot and that tends to escalate, that may be a problem. But if you notice things becoming lost from your life, and it seems that you're getting more and more separated from the things you care about, then maybe that's one symptom.
Mm-hmm. Yes, would you like to say something over here?
My father was in the Army. My father was quite a drinker in the Army. My father stopped when he was 30 years old. And then, but this sort of thing influenced me, this attitude towards drinking, and I've developed a problem as a result. And I have very similar problems in my family that my father had. So there is a family influence.
Is that adult child of alcoholic related?
I'd like to add a comment to the woman's comment previously. A child of an alcoholic, the parents don't feel they have a problem. But there still is the stress of alcohol in the family. And there's the child can still develop the tendency to be an adult child of an alcoholic and have similar symptoms. It affects all members of the family. You think it's just the person that's drinking, but it's not.
That's correct.
Yeah, they're children who tend to lose control. Lost children or children with really low self-esteem. Those are two really common symptoms, and the parents really have an influence on that. I fear that. I don't want to ruin my family or ruin my children, and I think as an alcoholic, a person who was an alcoholic for many years, I realized, an influence it could have on the family and the children. My own parents, I noticed my dad really picking on my mom and on me too. And, it really had an influence on me. It really scared me. It had a large impact when I saw my parents and how they interacted. I just wanted to get out of the house. I was never comfortable at home. I thought maybe I was the cause. Maybe I'd done something naughty or bad, and that's what set them off. So I was constantly afraid, and I didn't really know what was going on. I could see their facial expressions. I could see their anger and the struggles they were going through, wondering if I was the cause of that. I looked at my parents for love. And when I saw their behavior and their actions, and I saw all that, I could understand the emotions I was seeing. And as I got into treatment, I realized that I didn't want to be like my dad was. I have children, and I just don't want to be that way, and I don't want to model that to my children. So it's scary. I know when my dad smacked me, boy, it hurt. And I don't want to do that to my children. So there's a lot of issues related to adult children of alcoholics. Certainly there's individual differences. I don't mean it's exactly the same for everyone, but people do end up scarred in many ways.
You mean that a person who is an alcoholic themselves and goes to therapy, should the child of the alcoholic also go to therapy?
Sure, adult children of alcoholics need that. They need some vehicle to express what they're feeling. And if they start drinking or become alcoholic, they'll tend to keep relapsing. Adult children of alcoholics do need ways and vehicles where they can express their true feelings. I know, for example, my wife can get involved with a group in my local area. And, when she gets counseling or I receive counseling, we can compare notes and share feedback.
Yes, you have a comment? Okay, go ahead.
Did you drink during, suppose a person drinks before work, or did you drink at work? What about lunch? You go out and catch a drink on your lunch hour. Did you have that experience?
No. For me, it was mostly weekends. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'd drink all day long, mostly on the weekends. When I went to work, I'd cut down a lot more. But boy, come the weekend, I was really out of control. And, I had time off. And my friends had time off, and I could get all worked up, and all the anger I had to repress during the week, I could just let loose. I'd get home, I get good and drunk, and I thought it helped me calm down. I thought that was the effect, and boy, it was no good for me at all.
Okay, right over here.
I'm curious about your lives and the lives of alcoholic people. In some ways, alcohol has taught you a lot about life. And are there some precious things that you've learned as a result of this experience?
pressure, a lot too much pressure, too much stress.
And Rhonda?
Well, I'm much more, feel that life is much more precious to me now because I lost my school jobs, I lost my friends, and I just really lost everything. And I had to find out who I was. And now I'm starting to find out who I am as a person.
Good, okay.
My question to you, since you've talked so much about your family and yourselves, how about your friends, and what kind of an impact does this make on your friends? Did you lose your friends? When did they become supportive?
Okay, for me, I had friends at work on the job, and I think, they were with their spouses, but I don't know if they really helped me that much, The way it ended up, I knew people from work, and I knew some other alcoholics, but, I wasn't able to help them if I see them at work, I knew some other people at work with problems that I really couldn't help them. And I just, took a hands-off attitude. That was the way I approached it.
I'd like to emphasize the point about when you sought treatment, did your friends exclude you after that?
No, my friends had mixed reactions. I was afraid I would lose my friends. When I entered therapy, some of them had still come up to me and try and be friendly, and they were almost, I could see their expressions. It was almost like a mirror for me. Some of them I knew were proud that I was trying to improve myself and proud of what I was doing. They say, "How are you? How you doing?" And they put on a big smile and almost try and be overly friendly. And I was just being sober. That's what was important to me. And boy, I felt happier. Maybe
Good. Stay with us. We'll be right back with more on substance abuse. We're continuing our discussion about substance abuse. We've had quite a lot of audience participation. Here's another question here.
It takes a lot of courage for the two of you to be up on a panel like this, and I really applaud you for your courage and bravery. My question is, how long have the two of you been recovering?
For me, it's been 8 months of sobriety and 8 months of optimistic, positive thinking. And with my wife, who's here, she's not drinking at all. And we get along much, much better. My wife's here with us in the audience.
Where is she? Stand up, please. Come on,
stand up.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you for being here. Did you want to respond about that, Rhonda?
Myself, I don't like to say how long I've been sober.
Okay. I don't like to say how long I've been sober because I don't want to set that goal so that I'm counting the days to see if I can make it. You know, that would suppose I relapse, then that would make me feel like I'd lost everything. So I don't like to count the days. I just like to count each day as a sober day.
One day at a time, so to speak. Yes, very good. Very good.
I applaud both of you for your effort and your bravery in speaking out about this. I had a similar experience with a friend of mine. He's really an alcoholic, really addicted to alcohol, and is unwilling to admit that he has an alcohol problem, and I've been bothering him about it for a couple of years. But he really enjoys it, and I'm wondering how I can get through to him. What might I be able to say?
Well, that's really a tough question. It's very hard to come up to somebody and say, hey, I think you've got a problem. Actually, the person themselves has to decide that for themselves. That's all you can do.
Yeah, you really can't. I mean, you can let them know once, but you keep trying, it's not going to do any good at all. You know, they'll just wonder, what are you pestering me for? So, I mean, it's fine to tell them what you think, but once, twice, if you keep harping on them, it's not going to help. You won't get through.
Well, you know, maybe helping the person out with their budget or all different kinds of things. I mean, talking about alcohol, I won't, you know, mention that to him. But, you know, I mentioned to him once and said, you know, do you think you might have an alcohol problem? But he really denied it, and I stopped it after that. And he's been fired from his job. I mean, he used to work at Kodak. That was a great job. You know, I told him he better cut down in order to keep his position. And, you know, what should I do to try to get his, you know, to sort of get his attention, to get his head back on track? You know, what might be a way to do that?
Yeah. Maybe that's what it takes.
You know, I agree with what George just said, but maybe the important thing is that he did get fired from his job. That might be a good thing for him.
First we have this question, and then we have a second one after that.
I'd like to respond to the woman's previous question, how you might be able to help a person that doesn't realize they have a problem. I mean, probably the best thing we can do as a friend or a spouse or a roommate is just to say, look, last night you were amazing. I couldn't believe you were so trashed. You know, and describe to the person what's happening. So as they begin to get these checks on reality, they'll begin to develop sort of an internal locus of control. I mean, tell them about throwing up and making a mess and being angry and all that stuff. I mean, don't clean up the house for them. Then they won't be able to see what's going on. So just try to reflect reality back to them. If they're going to fail, if they're going to do, you know, have poor behavior, bad behavior, let them see it. Don't hide it from them. Don't try to be polite. Try to help them recognize their own behavior.
Thank you for clarifying that and adding to that.
I'm wondering about, you know, the differences between hearing people and deaf people. What are the percentages, perhaps, of people who have alcohol problems amongst hearing people and amongst deaf people? And who has the greater percentage, hearing people or deaf people?
I think it's the same for groups of people like that. Certainly depends on individuals, but collectively I don't see a difference between deaf people and hearing people.
We have some people who are deaf professionals in the alcohol field. Has there been any research on that topic that you have a response to?
There's no definitive research on this. I mean, there was one research study that proved that handicapped people have a higher rate of alcoholism than the general population. But, you know, perhaps there was only a small number of deaf people involved in that study.
Thank you.
My question is in regards to the two of you. Do you feel that you're recovering alcoholics? Or now that you are recovering alcoholics, I'm wondering, some people say that it's a disease. Well, if you take that concept, or if you talk about that concept of recovering, I mean, can you recover from a disease? Or, you know, can you be a recovered person from alcohol? I mean, you sort of live with it. So, I mean, you're either drinking it or you're not. So, how do you know that you're recovered? You know, what's the point that you arrive at that tells you that you're a recovered person? You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know what you think, George, but I'd like to respond to that. I feel that I'm a recovering alcoholic because I'm gaining daily in self-esteem and in control of my life. Things are getting better and better and better all the time without drinking. But if I started drinking, I would gradually start to lose ground again. And so as I gain ground, I'm recovering, but if I give way to pressure, then I'm relapsing, and so, or I'm going more toward alcoholism tendencies. Okay, and I would be regressing, but currently I'm recovering.
It's like a prescription of stress almost. If the doctor gives you some sort of prescription to deal with stress or, to stop your disease or illness, to treat the symptoms. Sometimes it's almost, alcoholism's the same way. It's kind of like treating symptoms and you start doing better and better, but I guess it's a prescription to deal with stress in a way. Certainly you have symptoms, like a fever or whatever, and you can become cured, if you will, and alcoholism, you can be recovering, but I don't know if you're cured.
I have a question for the two of you. Are you tempted to drink during your workday, or perhaps when you're driving? Or does it just not occur to you any longer? I mean, in those two instances, does drinking occur to you?
Am I tempted to drink?
I mean,
experience
a lot of
temptation?
people are caught for driving while intoxicated, DWI, And some people, and you've said you've lost control, right? So, if you lose control of your vehicle, I mean...
Well...
Yes, the question about temptation, about drinking again, is that your point for the question?
Some jobs you can't drink.
Okay,
I mean, you're just not able to because of the position. And, now smoking's against the law, too, so...
I know what she's getting at. Yes. When I'm at work, I'm sober, but I still am an alcoholic. I work hard, and I'm working hard all the time. And, I see people that might be talking about drinking, and boy, it's tough. It's not easy staying sober. I see what they're talking about. They want to go out and party, but I've just got to maintain sobriety and think positive and head home and not to the bars with them.
It requires a lot of willpower, doesn't it? At AA, one of their steps is changing your friends and the places that you used to go to. And after treatment, suppose you go back to the old friends and to the old places that you used to go to while you were drinking. You're not supposed to do that according to AA's 12 steps. You should start associating with new friends who don't drink. How is that adjustment?
It works okay. Some of my old friends is fine. We can get together and chat, but other friends it's not as easy, We've kind of lost touch. It gets really superficial, and, I might regret that, but it really is superficial. What's important to me is the one word, no.
And Rhonda?
When I first completed my program at Norris Clinic, I went back to hang out with my old friends, and I immediately went into a relapse. And so I did have to change my circle of friends to people who were not involved with these type of habits.
After treatment, I'm sure that you found your true friends were the friends that kept up with you and stood with you. And the friends that caused you to have more temptation, you avoided.
Right.
Yes, it's
Right.
true.
Yes, I agree. Definitely.
Okay, over here.
Speaking of friends, what about your family? I mean, once you're recovering and you go back to your family and you see that they have the same alcohol behavior, I mean, how do you resist that? It's your family.
Well, when you go through treatment and you're on the road to recovery, perhaps when you see your parents, you just have to tell them honestly, please don't bring alcohol to my home. My mother-in-law lives right next door, you know, a really close neighbor, and I just had to tell her, please, I can't afford to have you bringing alcohol into my house. And she was just real understanding and accepting of that. It was just a quiet, respectful acceptance. And, you know, sometimes I know they'll take off all of a sudden, and they're just tempted to go out for a drink, and, well, that's what they need to do. But not for me.
There are other questions. You wanted to have a question? Okay, go ahead to the microphone.
Do you still want to drink, or did you just shut it out of your life?
Well, I just think positive. I stay optimistic and don't drink. That's the key for me.
Well, for me, I'm not the type who's really tempted. You know, if I take one drink, I've lost control, and then I drink a lot. But if I can avoid the one, we're fine.
My goodness, we've had a beautiful discussion today. You've taught us a lot. I must thank you. This is the last... We have to close now. We'll be right back. Thank you very much, George Prentice and Ronda Mothersell, for sharing your life stories with us. And it's given us a lot of inspiration. Have wonderful audience participation today. Thank you for your sharing. Thanks, everyone.